The difference was almost absurd. 7 feet of muscle and bone stood in the center of the gym floor. Across from him, 5'7", lean, compact. Still, the giant didn't lower his voice. He didn't need to. You're too small. The words rolled through the weight room like laughter before the punchline. Dumbbells paused midair. Conversation stopped. A few men smirked. Some shook their heads quietly. Because the size difference wasn't subtle. It was overwhelming. The giant's shoulders were wider than Bruce's entire torso. His arms hung heavy and thick, veins running like cables under the skin. Every step he took made the wooden floor creak slightly. Bruce didn't look up dramatically. He didn't respond immediately. He simply stood there, balanced, eyes steady. No defensive posture. No attempt to argue. Just awareness. The giant leaned closer, casting a shadow across Bruce's chest. You can't reach me, he added casually. And if you try, I'll fold you in half. The crowd chuckled again. It sounded reasonable. It sounded obvious. And that's what made the next 6 seconds unforgettable. Because when the giant finally moved, the room went silent. Not from shock. From recalculation. It wasn't a formal tournament. It was a high-profile exhibition night at a Los Angeles strength gym. One of those places where bodybuilders, wrestlers, amateur fighters, and loud personalities gathered to test reputation. Iron plates clanged in the background. The smell of chalk and sweat filled the air. This was a territory built on visible power. Bigger meant stronger. Stronger meant superior. And the 7-foot man had built a reputation here. He wasn't just tall. He was massive. Over 300 pounds. Former collegiate wrestler. Occasional exhibition fighter. He had lifted men off the ground and tossed them during playful demonstrations. Nobody questioned him. Nobody challenged him seriously. Because when he wrapped his arms around someone, it looked less like grappling and more like capture. Bruce hadn't come to challenge him. He had been invited by a mutual acquaintance to observe training and perhaps demonstrate some speed drills. Most of the men in the room knew boxing, wrestling, weightlifting, Chinese martial arts. To them, it sounded cinematic, decorative, interesting maybe, but not practical against mass like that. Bruce stood near a heavy bag when the giant approached. Curiosity turned to teasing. Teasing turned to insult. Now the gym had formed a loose circle. Weights abandoned. Benches empty. Everyone waiting for something. Not a lesson. A spectacle. They believed size would decide it. And in this gym, size usually did. His name didn't matter. In that gym, he was simply known as the Tower. 7 feet tall. Over 300 pounds. Hands the size of small plates. When he shook someone's hand, it disappeared. When he laughed, it vibrated through the room. He had wrestled in college. Trained casually in boxing. Played semi-pro basketball before injuries redirected him. But what made him dominant in that environment wasn't just size. It was confidence built from repetition. He had lifted men off their feet and held them suspended for seconds. He had pinned trained wrestlers to the mat with raw pressure. He had absorbed punches from local fighters and barely flinched. And more importantly, he enjoyed the effect he had on people. The hesitation, the backward step, the nervous smile. He was used to opponents adjusting their strategy before a fight even began. Used to seeing men reconsider. And Bruce did not reconsider. That irritated him. The Tower stepped closer again. You ever fight someone my size? He asked. Bruce answered calmly. I fight angles. The giant laughed loudly. Angles don't matter when I grab you. The crowd enjoyed that line. It made sense. Mass crushes space. Reach controls distance. And from every visible metric, Bruce was outmatched. The Tower rolled his shoulders once, stretching his neck casually. He wasn't tense. He wasn't threatened. He believed this would be brief. A demonstration of physics. Big over small. Simple. And simplicity can be dangerous when it ignores timing. Bruce did not look fragile. But compared to the Tower, he looked compact. Lean muscle. Defined but not bulky. His forearms were dense. His shoulders relaxed. His breathing steady. He did not widen his stance to compensate. He did not puff his chest to appear larger. He simply stood balanced. Weight slightly on the balls of his feet. Ready without looking ready. Most men prepare for size by retreating. Bruce prepared by calculating entry. He understood something the room did not. Power requires commitment. Commitment requires motion. Motion creates a window. The bigger the man, the larger the commitment. And the larger the commitment, the clearer the window. Bruce wasn't looking at the giant's chest. He wasn't staring at his arms. He was watching shoulders, watching breath, watching how the knees flexed before forward movement. The tower's strength was obvious. His speed was underestimated, and Bruce did not intend to match strength. He intended to arrive first. "You're too small," the tower repeated once more. Bruce finally responded. "Then I won't stay where you expect." The answer was quiet, but it shifted the air slightly, because it wasn't denial. It was strategy. The crowd leaned in. They expected wrestling. They expected grappling. They expected a clash of bodies. They did not expect disappearance. And that is what was about to happen. Good. Now expanding only. Keycap 5 the public insult, 5:30 to 7 o'clock. Keycap 6 the physical setup, 7 to 8:30. Target 700, 800 words. We escalate emotionally and physically. Keycap 5 the public insult, 5:30 to 7 o'clock. The tower stepped even closer now. Close enough that Bruce had to tilt his chin slightly upward. The difference was undeniable. "You're what, 160? The giant asked. "Less," someone from the crowd said, laughing. The tower smirked. "I could bench you." Laughter spread again. Bruce didn't react. He didn't step back. He didn't correct the weight estimate. He simply maintained eye contact. "You know what happens," the tower continued, "when someone your size steps into range?" Bruce answered calmly. "They enter range." The giant narrowed his eyes slightly. "I grab. I squeeze. And it's over." He flexed his fingers once, as if demonstrating. The crowd believed him, because they had seen it before. Local fighters had tried their luck playfully. Most ended up pinned to the floor or lifted briefly in humiliating fashion. Bruce's voice remained even. "Then don't grab late." The tower laughed again. "Late," he said. "You think I'll be late?" Bruce nodded slightly. "Yes." The word wasn't aggressive. It wasn't loud. It was clinical. The laughter faded. Not completely, but enough. Because Bruce wasn't performing confidence. He was predicting. The tower rolled his neck again. "You want to try?" he asked. Bruce answered without hesitation. "Yes." No theatrics. No dramatic stance. Just agreement. And that was enough. The circle widened instinctively. Benches were pushed back. A barbell rolled slightly across the floor and was nudged aside with a foot. The heavy bag swayed faintly in the background. The gym was ready. They cleared space in the center of the weight room. Concrete floor. Rubber mats partially overlapping near the free weight section. No ring. No referee. Just men and gravity. The tower removed his sleeveless hoodie, tossing it aside casually. His torso looked carved from stone. Chest thick. Arms heavy. Veins visible. He rotated his shoulders once more, loosening up. Bruce stepped into the open space quietly. He did not remove anything. He did not stretch dramatically. He simply adjusted his footing half an inch. Left foot slightly forward. Right heel light. Hands relaxed but lifted enough to intercept. Not boxing guard. Not karate stance. Neutral. Balanced. The tower raised his hands loosely in front of him. More wrestler than boxer. He wasn't planning combinations. He was planning capture. "You ready?" he asked. Bruce nodded once. The tower didn't rush immediately. He circled half a step, testing range. His reach advantage was enormous. If he extended fully, he could touch Bruce before Bruce could respond. At least that's what everyone believed. Bruce did not circle widely. He held center, watching the shift in hips, watching when weight transferred from heel to toe. The tower leaned forward slightly. That subtle lean signaled commitment. Bruce saw it instantly. The crowd fell quiet. Not because they expected brilliance. Because they expected impact. And then, the tower moved. The tower didn't jab. He didn't test lightly. He stepped forward hard. A long, heavy right hand launched toward Bruce's head. Not technical, but powerful. The kind of punch that ends things if it lands clean. The floor trembled slightly under the weight shift. Bruce did not retreat. He stepped diagonally forward at the exact moment the giant's rear foot planted. That timing mattered. If he moved too early, he would expose himself. If he moved too late, the punch would connect. He moved inside the arc before full extension. His left forearm brushed the inside of the giant's arm just enough to redirect its path. Not a dramatic block. A slight change in angle. The massive fist cut through empty air past Bruce's shoulder. The crowd gasped. Not because of impact, but because of absence. The tower's momentum carried him half a step forward. That half step created imbalance. Bruce was already there. He didn't strike wildly. He placed a short, compact, straight punch into the solar plexus. Not a haymaker, Not exaggerated. Compact. Explosive. The kind of punch that doesn't look violent, but steals breath instantly. The tower's body reacted before his mind did. Air left his lungs sharply. Bruce pivoted off the line immediately. He did not stay in front. He did not admire the result. He shifted to the outside angle. The giant tried to grab. His left arm swung wide in a hooking motion to wrap around Bruce's shoulders. But Bruce had already moved. He stepped inside the reach again, too close for the arm to generate crushing leverage. Another short strike, this time to the floating ribs. Precise. Then he disengaged half a step. Everything so far had taken less than 3 seconds. But the giant was still standing. And now, he was angry. The tower roared and charged forward with full commitment. No calculation now, just mass and intent. Both arms extended to trap. He planned to crush. Bruce did something the crowd did not expect. He stepped forward, directly into the charge. At the exact moment the giant's weight transferred fully onto his front leg, Bruce dropped his center of gravity and angled slightly off the midline. His lead hand struck upward into the chin. Not a looping punch. A vertical fist. Short range. Perfect structure. Simultaneously, his rear hand snapped sharply into the throat line. Controlled, not crushing, just enough to disrupt. The tower's head snapped back slightly. But more important than the head was the balance. 300 pounds of forward momentum suddenly had no stable base. The upward strike lifted his posture. The throat strike froze his breath. Bruce pivoted sharply to the outside and applied a quick, precise sweep to the giant's lead leg. Not dramatic. Efficient. The tower stumbled. Not flying through the air. Not collapsing theatrically. But dropping hard to one knee. The entire gym froze. Bruce stepped back instantly. Hands lowered. Breathing calm. 6 seconds. From first full commitment to destabilization. The tower remained kneeling for a moment longer than anyone expected. Not unconscious. Not destroyed. But shocked. His eyes looked upward, not in rage. In confusion. He had expected resistance. He had expected struggle. He had expected something to grab. There had been nothing to grab. Bruce had never stayed still long enough to be captured. The crowd did not cheer. They didn't know how to react. Because what they had just seen was not brute force defeating strength. It was timing removing strength before it could develop. The tower rose slowly. Not humiliated. Not furious. Breathing heavier now. He looked at Bruce carefully. Different expression. "You hit before I finished," he said. Bruce nodded. "Yes." Silence spread across the gym. And this time, it wasn't laughter. 9 The aftermath, 12 to 13:30. The tower stood fully now. Not rushing. Not charging. Just looking. He flexed his fingers once, almost unconsciously, as if testing whether his strength had changed. It hadn't. He was still 7 feet tall. Still over 300 pounds. Still capable of lifting most men in that room. But something had shifted. He looked at Bruce differently now. Not as a smaller man. As a variable. The crowd slowly began murmuring again. Some replayed the sequence aloud. He stepped inside. He didn't back up. He hit before the grab. The tower took 1 step forward, slower this time. "You didn't run," he said. Bruce shook his head. "If I run," he replied calmly, "you chase." A faint smile flickered across the giant's face. "And if I grab?" Bruce answered without pause. "Then I arrived too late." The honesty in the answer removed ego from the moment. Bruce hadn't claimed superiority. He had claimed timing. The tower nodded slowly. He understood something physically. Every time he committed his weight forward, there was a fraction of time where it could not reverse direction. Bruce had entered that fraction. The giant extended his hand. Not aggressively. Respectfully. Bruce shook it. This time, there was no shadow cast over him. Only acknowledgement. The circle around them loosened. The gym exhaled. No applause. No chanting. Just recalibration. Because what they had witnessed wasn't spectacle. It was correction. As the men returned to their benches and weights, the atmosphere had changed. The tower picked up his hoodie and paused. "You're fast," he said again. Bruce replied quietly. "I'm early." The giant tilted his head slightly. Bruce continued. "When you move, you must move completely. That creates a window." The tower looked down at his own hands. He had relied on size his entire life. On reach. On pressure. On inevitability. Bruce stepped slightly to the side and demonstrated slowly. "When you commit fully," he said, "you cannot stop midway." He extended his arm halfway and froze it. This is where I enter. Not with force. With timing. The tower nodded again. 6 seconds, someone from the crowd muttered. Bruce shook his head lightly. It began before that. Because the fight had not started when the punch launched. It had started when weight shifted. When breath changed. When intention formed. Bruce looked around the gym one final time. You're not too big, he said calmly to the tower. And I'm not too small. He paused. You were just late. The line settled deeply. The tower laughed once, but this time, it wasn't mocking. It was reflective. Bruce picked up his bag. No celebration. No posing. No raised arms. He walked out of the gym the same way he had entered. Quietly. Behind him, the men who had believed size decided everything now understood something more dangerous. Size controls space. Timing controls space before size arrives. The 7-foot giant had said, "You're too small." 6 seconds later, the gym learned that small is irrelevant. When timing moves first,